Hi there, this is Kevin from Data School. You're about to watch an excerpt from a private Q&A webcast that I do every single month. This question is about multi-level indexing in pandas. I'm super excited to release this video because people have been asking me about the multi-index for years, and I finally built a lesson to cover this crucial topic. Stick around to the end to find out how you can join these webcasts in the future. Thanks. So this is a question from Manny. He says, could you please elaborate a bit on multi-indexing? This is in pandas, especially how it's related to group by, how to properly slice a multi-index table, and also how to concatenate on more than one level. Could you also please elaborate a bit on tidy data, and if you think it is preferable to split data into different tables per patient, that's his data set, or to keep all observations in a multi-index. Okay, so his question is about multi-indexing in pandas, and I've put together a little lesson that I'm going to live code that should answer a lot of these. I think we'll answer all of these questions, which I hope you enjoy. So let me go ahead and share my screen one more time here. So the topic here is multi-index in pandas, and I will import pandas as PD. And then I was thinking about a good data set to demonstrate the multi-index, and I pulled one up. I'm going to read it from my local machine. It's a very small data frame called stocks.csv, okay? But that would work, but actually there's also a URL. You can pull this data set from yourself. So I'll go ahead and use that actually. bit.ly/small stocks. Okay, you have to type in that whole URL, but Read CSV can read from that URL. We're going to store it in a data frame called stocks, and let's look at stocks. Okay, now before I forget, let me go ahead and hide the header in the toolbar so that we can have a little more screen space. I will be providing you with this code, or you can follow along, but I'll provide you with this code in this notebook form if you want to study it later on. But here's our stocks data frame, and this is the entire data frame. It's only 9 rows. What are we looking at? We're looking at some stocks data. It's got 4 columns. We've got date. We've got the closing price that day. We've got the volume, and we've got the stock symbol, okay? So the stock symbol is the company, that's Cisco, Apple, and Microsoft. Here are the dates. It's 3 days in October 2016. Here is the price and volume of trading for that stock on that day, okay? Anyway, let's get into the index. So this is a regular data frame. So if we look at the index, we have what's called a range index that represents these integers 0 through 8, okay? It's a regular index. It's not a multi-index. Now, before we get into the multi-index, I just want to do a quick group by, okay? Stocks.group by symbol, okay? And you'll see what I'm doing this in a moment. Close.mean. Okay, so the group by means for each symbol, meaning for each company, what's the mean closing price, okay? And we'll run that, and we'll see Apple's mean 112, Cisco, I think, 31, Microsoft 57. Okay, so that's a group by. Now, to follow what I'm about to do next, you have to be familiar with group bys, because I'm now going to group by 2 things. I'm going to do stocks.group by, and I'm going to pass a list. I'm going to pass symbol and date .close.mean. So this is saying for each pair of symbol and date, what's the mean closing price, okay? Now, it's a little silly because there's only one closing price for each symbol and date. But you could imagine a case if this column was like price and it had 2 prices per day, like an open and close, then you could take the mean of those. So, you know, yes, it's true the mean is kind of silly in this case, but I think you'll see that what I'm going after in a minute. Okay. So what are we looking at? we are actually looking at a series. So I'm going to save this as SER just to emphasize that. This is a series with a multi-index. And if we look at the index, we'll see, yes, this is a multi-index. Now, the first thing I'll say about multi-index is a multi-index adds another dimension to your data. So a series is normally one dimension, but a series with a multi-index is kind of like two dimensions. A data frame with a normal index is two dimensions, but with a multi-index, it's three dimensions, or at least three dimensions. So the way you can kind of notice this is you're like, okay, normally my index is just one thing, and now I've got two things that I'm indexing by, okay? What we're going to do is you can actually unstack a multi-index series, and it becomes a data frame, okay? So if you've always thought of as a series as one-dimensional and a data frame is two-dimensional, well, a series with a multi-index is two dimensions, not one. But because it's two dimensions, it naturally can be represented as a data frame, okay? So when I unstacked it, you now have a data frame. Now, I will say one side note, and then we're going to talk more about selection, and then we'll move into a data frame with multi-index, which is probably what Manny was ultimately asking about. But I don't want to just fly right through this and miss a couple important things. So I do want to mention that if this is what you were looking for, there's actually a different way to get this data, and it's actually by doing a pivot table, okay? So if I had instead done stocks, the original data frame, dot pivot table, values equals close, because that's what's in here, the closing price, index equals symbol, because that's what's over here, and then columns equals date, you will get the exact same thing as this followed by an unstack. Okay. So it renders the exact same thing, and that's because the default aggregation function for a pivot table is a mean, but you can change the aggregation function. Okay. So this is a data frame, okay? And I'm just going to save it as DF to emphasize that. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about selection, because understanding how to select from a multi-index series will help us when we talk about selection from a multi-index data frame, okay? So let me just highlight real quick. We've got our series. Okay, here's our series. Let's say that I want to select all of the Apple data, okay? I just do, and actually let's make this a new cell, series.loc, AAPL, okay? So selecting from a multi-index series, you can just name with loc the outer level, and that will allow you to select all the data that it falls under Apple, okay? So we've got the date and the closing price, all right? Now, let's say I wanted to focus on Apple on this day, okay? Well, I would actually just say series.loc, and comma, whoops, that date. And I need to put that in quotes, okay? So that's how I just select that number, okay? Now, what if instead of selecting a single symbol and getting all this stuff, what if I wanted to select a single date and then get all the data surrounding it, okay? Well, it's kind of like, it's exactly like selecting from a data frame. So which first level data do I want? I want all of the symbols. Which date do I want? I want this date, okay? And you get all of the prices, Apple, get Cisco, Microsoft, from that date, all right? So, quick recap. I can select from the outer level by just naming it. I can select from the outer and inner level and just get the value, or I can select from just the inner level, okay? All right. Hope that is helpful. Feel free, as I said before, feel free to type in the chat if you have some questions as I'm going. Now, what I want to show you real quick is the really cool part. When you have the data frame, which remember, you can either create this, the data frame contains the same exact data as the series. It's just in a different shape. I got it by unstacking the series, okay? So seer.unstack is this. The data, it's the data frame is the same thing. The cool thing is that if you have reshaped your data to look like a data frame, the selection works exactly the same. DataFrame.loc Apple. DataFrame.loc Apple October 3rd. DataFrame.loc all rows this column. And you can see it makes sense because when we've got a data frame and we're using .loc, this is how we select rows. This is how we select row column pairs. And this is how we say all rows this column. Okay. So whether or not your multi-index series is represented as a series or a regular data frame, the selection works the same. All right. All right. Let's finally actually move on to a data frame with a multi-index, okay? Because again, that is probably what Manny has in his data set. So stocks, what I'm going to do, so again, here's the stocks data set as it started. But to create a multi-index out of this, we're going to set the index on symbol and date, okay? And we'll do in place equals true, and then we'll print it out, okay? I think I got that right. Okay. So we have now set a multi-index for this data frame. And you can tell it's a multi-index because there are two of them that are in bold and they're a little lower. So visually you can tell, but you can also, of course, check the index. We'll see that it is a multi-index, okay? Now, you're probably thinking like, well, that doesn't look, something looks off. And the reason is you actually probably want to sort it first, and then it'll look correct, if you will. And you'll see what I mean in a second. So all we have to do is just stocks.sortIndex in place equals true. Okay. And let's look at stocks again. Now, this is what we really wanted. So we have a multi-index and it's sorted first by the outer level, the outer index level, and then by the inner index level. Okay. So this is our multi-index data frame. And the challenge we want to get into now is how do we do selection from this multi-index data frame? Let's start with the easiest stuff. So stocks.loc, and we're going to continue to use loc. If I choose Apple, AAPL, we will get kind of what you'd expect. I'm just selecting this little block of data when I select Apple, and that is exactly what I get. All right. Now, what if I want Apple on October 3rd? Well, your first thought might be, well, how about Apple and 16, 10, 03. Now, I believe this will work, but I'm going to show you a good practice that is going to save you a lot of headache, okay, in debugging your selection statements for multi-index data frames, okay? So here's what you're going to do. When you have this multi-index and you're doing anything other than just selecting the outer level, you're going to pass in the indices you want as a tuple, comma, and then you're going to name which columns you want. So just like before with a regular data frame, for loc, you say, what rows do I want? What columns do I want? The first part of that, here's the what rows do I want? Here's the what columns do I want? Okay. Now, you pass it as a tuple. That's what this is right here. Because when you don't have the parentheses, pandas can get confused about like what that comma means. Are you distinguishing between different index levels, or are you distinguishing between rows, between index levels and columns? Okay. So you put it in parentheses to pass it as a tuple, and then you do a comma, and then you put a colon to say all columns. Okay. So with that, I can get the close and the volume for Apple on that day. Apple, date, close, and volume. Now, if I just want the close, you probably have figured out how to do it, which is just type close here. Okay, 112.52. All right. Now, get a tiny bit trickier. What if you want to get the data from multiple stocks? Let's say Apple and Microsoft. Well, we're going to say stocks.loc in our brackets, and then we know we're going to have parentheses, something, comma, colon, okay? And what I'm going to pass is a list, Apple, Microsoft, okay? And let's pick a particular date. So I think, let's see, 2016, 10, 3. Okay. So now I've got two different stocks on one day, but both the close and volume columns. Now, as you might expect, I can also, I don't know how many, I'll do a few more examples of selection. If this is new to you, I know this is probably pretty fast, but if you've been struggling with this, hopefully this is turns on a light bulb for you. So you can throw in, of course, close only, and now I can see Apple and Microsoft on that day, just the closing price. What's another thing I can do here? I could say, well, what if, and I'll copy and paste just to save myself a little typing. What if I want, let's see, I want multiple dates, but I just want Apple, okay? So I'm going to remove the brackets there because I don't need to pass that list. So this would work, but what I'm doing is, what if I want multiple dates? I will say this date and another date, 2016, 10/04. Okay, and that's a list of strings. So I think I've got that right. Okay. Now, the final example I want to show you for this, and then I'll answer some of Manny's other questions, and then we'll wrap up. So what if I want these 2 days, but I want all stocks, not just Apple? You probably would think, and so let's start with this, and I'm going to change this to a colon, okay? Now, the first thought of like, oh, I want all symbols on those 2 dates and both close and volume, you might think, oh, I'll just throw in a colon. Well, for technical reasons, that does not work, okay? So what you have to do looks really funny, but you're going to type slice none, okay? And that is how it will work, okay? Slice none, and then your two dates, and then I want both close and volume. Okay. I know that's super complicated, but this is what selection with multi-index looks like. Okay. It takes a lot of practice to get it right. Now, I know I've been talking about this for a while, but I still haven't answered all of Manny's questions, though I will be able to wrap up with them soon. So he asked how to concatenate on more than one level. Now, what does that mean? I want to just show you what he means. So I've got some code I wrote to kind of save me a little time. And don't worry too much about the code itself, but I'm just going to copy and paste it in, and then we'll talk about it. Okay. Now in our data frame, we've got symbol date closing price, symbol date volume. Okay. And his question is, how do I put this data frame and this data frame together? And the answer is you're going to do a merge operation. Okay. So it's actually pretty simple. I'm going to call it both is the result. We're going to do pd.merge, and we're going to say close, because close is the name of this data frame. I named it close, as you can see. This one's called volume. So we're going to merge close and volume. And we're going to say, rather than defining a column to join on, we're going to say join on the left index, meaning the index of close, and the right index. Now, if there were some missing values in one of them or the other, you'd have to think about the merge type, which is the how argument. But there aren't any missing values, so we're just going to use the default. And let's go ahead and run this. And you can see that we've reconstructed our data frame. Okay, so that is how, when you have two data frames with the same multi-index, but a different column or columns, that is how you combine them. You combine them with the merge functionality. Okay, final aspect of Manny's question. Could you please elaborate a bit on tidy data, and if you think it's preferable to split the data into different tables per patient, or keep all observations in a multi-index? So essentially, he's asking, well, number one, what is tidy data? And I'll just give a brief explanation from the book R for Data Science, written by Hadley Wickham, who's famous for talking about tidy data. And his definition is, here are the rules which make a data set tidy. Each variable must have its own column. Each observation must have its own row. Each value must have its own cell. Okay. And I will link to this where you can read more about it. So that's the tidy data principle. And funny enough, the very data set we started with is already tidy. This is a tidy data set. Now, when we add two indices to it and make it a multi-index, I don't think it makes it any less tidy, but you can always, if you need, like if what you've got is this down here, and you're saying, oh, well, I need to do something else, and it's not technically tidy because it has this multi-index, all you have to do is just say both.reset index. Now you're back to the original data frame. Okay, so you just reset the index, and this data is tidy. To answer your question, should you split this into multiple data frames based on patient? That would essentially be like having one data frame for Apple, one data frame for Cisco, one data frame for Microsoft. And in my opinion, in most cases, that's just going to make your job a lot more complicated, and having it all in the same data frame is going to be much more efficient for your workflow. Hope this video was helpful to you. If you'd like to join my monthly webcasts and ask your own question, sign up for my membership program at the $5 level by going to patreon.com/dataschool. There's a link in the description below, or you can click the box on your screen. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.